What's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. Once again, this video is coming a bit later in the night than I wanted it to. I'm feeling kind of under the weather, so it's been hard to really get this video out, but I'm getting it to y'all. Hopefully it's not too late, but I appreciate y'all watching anyways, and also if my voice sounds different, that's part of why. But yeah, first game we have on the docket, three of which we have to cover, was Knicks versus Cavs. And game one was electric. It was everything I was hoping for in this series and more. We saw a great star duel between Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell, both of which had, like I said, amazing performances. You also got huge hustle plays from both sides, all throughout the game, basically down to the wire in the fourth quarter, where the Knicks secured a huge offensive rebound. Julius Randle did for that fact. They ended up winning the game, taking game one on the road because of that hustle, that offensive rebounding, limiting turnovers for the most part, and playing great defense on basically anybody not named Donovan Mitchell. And even for him, they played some great defense. He was just better because that's what playoff Spida does. It was a great win for the Knicks, and for them to take game two and take a commanding series heading back to New York, they needed to do pretty much all of the same things. Except that they didn't. They were almost completely the opposite. They executed terribly both offensively and defensively. They turned the ball over a ton. They didn't dominate the offensive glass like they did previously. Their offense was all out of sync. Jalen Brunson wasn't very good. Not that anybody really was on this Knicks team. And they got destroyed. The Cavaliers were up by about 20 points at halftime, and they never looked back, especially in the second quarter. They dominated. They made a bunch of big adjustments. They just had probably the best comeback game that they could have asked for. I mean, they executed pretty much everything perfectly. They showed a lot of fight to tie this one up. They were led by Darius Garland, who had 32 points and 7 dimes after last game, being a bit underwhelming, mainly in that fourth quarter where he was really unaggressive, and basically it was just Donovan Mitchell down the stretch. But this game, right from the get-go, he was looking to attack, and he finished the first half with 26 of his 32 points. He was amazing, torching anybody that the Knicks put in front of them. He was aggressive, and Donovan Mitchell himself also had a good game. It wasn't as much of a scoring performance. Rather, he was dishing out dimes. He had 17 points and 13 assists, taking over the playmaking duties for the most part in this game because the Knicks sent a lot of pressure his way, so he just created plays for others and let Darius Garland cook, who the Knicks couldn't send a double at because eventually Donovan Mitchell or someone else on this team would get open. And having a backcourt like this for Cleveland is kind of unfair. I mean, you have two guys who can go out and give you 30 and 10 on any given night. Donovan Mitchell even could give you like a 40-point near triple-double like he almost did in game one. These two guys are some of the best offensive backcourt players in the entire league, and having them on the same team makes them so incredibly dangerous, especially for Donovan Mitchell, who really never had a backcourt partner like this in Utah. Now, he had, Mike Conley, who was good and was an all-star one season, but he was never going to go off for like 30 and 10. He wasn't one of the best shooters in the league like Darius Garland is, one of the better playmakers too. Conley was good, but Mitchell's really never had this type of offensive help, and that's part of why I like this Cavaliers roster so much for Spida. Meanwhile, Karis LeVert had 24 points on 9 of 16 shooting, got most of the minutes at the 3 in this one. Isaac Okoro actually only played 2 minutes. He got in early foul trouble. Karis LeVert came in, and he was really good. So they just kind of rode that wave. His spacing he provided was really solid. I thought he was fine defensively too. When Karis LeVert is cooking like this, the Cavs look really dangerous. Of course, it's an issue of how often can Karis do this because he's wildly inconsistent. But on nights like this where he's showing up and knocking down shots, it makes the Cavaliers offense that much more dynamic. Then down low, Evan Mobley had a big bounce back game after struggling a lot in game one. He had 13 points, 13 boards to go with a couple steals and a couple of blocks. All around great game from Evan Mobley there. And then for the Fro, Jared Allen had 9 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks himself. Really great game from that duo. And overall, the Cavs probably couldn't have asked for a much better bounce back game. They blew out the Knicks. This was over pretty much by halftime. And in the second half, they held strong, winning by over double digits. Just a great game from the Cavaliers as a whole. Sure, they would have loved to be 2-0 going to New York, but even so, I think this was a great momentum setter for them going to Madison Square Garden. And this brings us to the Knicks. And like I said, basically everybody struggled in this game for New York. Jalen Brunson, not at all able to score the way that he was in game one. The Knicks locked him up a lot better defensively. He was just also missing some shots that you typically see Jalen Brunson make, even if they are highly contested. I think he'll be better next game. I'm not too worried about him individually, but they do need him to be a star to even make this a series. Emmanuel quickly as well struggled, and he's really struggled in both games so far. They need more from him. He was one of their most consistent forces off the bench over the course of the regular season. I mean, he's in the 6th Man of the Year running for a reason, but they need more from quickly in this series if they want to stand a significant chance. So yeah, those are two guys who struggled, and other guys did as well. Like I said, it really wasn't a great game for anyone on the Knicks in particular, but there are two players in particular that I do want to cover in this video and talk about how they specifically need to be better, because ultimately I think their play is the key to the series, like I said in my preview video for this matchup. And those two guys are RJ Barrett and Julius Randle. Let's begin with RJ Barrett, who the Knicks gave over $100 million this past offseason in the hopes that he would continue to grow and develop, find some consistency, and become the third star next to Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson. Unfortunately, through the first year of that contract, that hasn't exactly been the case. He once again had promise, he showed some flashes, but it was once again a lot of inconsistency. He shot just 43% from the field. Defensively, he showed some promise, but it was inconsistent at times. He would fall asleep a lot off ball. It was just a mess of a season for RJ Barrett, and coming into the series, they needed him to be good. They needed him to be the consistent, impactful RJ Barrett that he showed he could be at times over the course of the season to have their best chance of winning. This was something in particular that I noted as an X factor for the series. Unfortunately for the Knicks, RJ's been consistent, but it's not been consistent in a good way, especially offensively, where in Game 1, he shot just 2 of 12 from the field while hitting 1 of 5 threes, and in Game 2 last night, he shot just 4 of 13 from the field, including 0 of 3 from deep. He hasn't really been a threat to score whatsoever when he's out there. It's basically a dud for the Knicks offensively. They need something out of him, and he's shown potential to do something. It's just so wildly inconsistent and overall inefficient when he tries to score the ball. The Knicks are better off going to a number of other players at the 3 spot, it feels like, at this point. And defensively in Game 1, he was fine, but in Game 2, he was getting torched on the defensive end, especially because he was primarily guarding Darius Garland for the most part. He fell asleep off ball sometimes too. It just wasn't a great game. He's not really helping them on either side of the ball through the first couple of games. Now, he's had some solid playmaking moments, and he did have some solid defensive moments in Game 1, like I said. But overall, I feel like he's been a net negative so far through these first 2 games, which you can't have from someone that you're paying $100 million. You need him to be better, and I do think there is a route to him being better, especially, going back home. Ultimately, players, especially young guys, play better at home, especially in these playoff scenarios. But I'm just not super encouraged by what I've seen so far. They need so much more out of RJ. If he was playing like a decently consistent player on both sides of the ball, all of a sudden the Knicks have a huge advantage in this series because they're already deeper as a squad overall. They just don't really have the star power to match up. So if RJ was playing anything like that third star, they would suddenly maybe be in a better spot than the Cavs are going into the rest of this series. But ultimately, I just don't know what they're going to get from RJ. He's inconsistent, and at this point, they might be better off going to somebody else at that 3 spot more consistently, giving up some of RJ's minutes in exchange. Next, let's talk about Julius Randle, who got a lot of slander when he made the playoffs last time for underperforming, and yeah, he really struggled. But that was a Knicks team that was not nearly as good as this one is now. They've got a co-star for him in Jalen Brunson, who's really, really good. They've got him a lot better role players too, and Randle himself, I believe now, is better than he was back then. So, coming into the series, once again, as I mentioned in my series preview video, I thought that Julius Randle was going to be a big X factor for this Knicks team, especially going up against Evan Mobley, who finished top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year voting. They were going to need him to ultimately win that matchup to take this series. And in Game 1, he won that matchup. He played, fine. He had 19 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists. Now, he did shoot just 35% from the field, which has to get better, but he also was a monster on the offensive glass and ultimately secured the final rebound that won this game for the Knicks in the end. So it wasn't his greatest performance. They were going to need more out of him going forward, but I thought overall he was okay. However, in this game, he was not okay. In this one, he had 22 points, 8 rebounds, and 1 assist, but shot 40% from the field and had 6 turnovers, 4 of which came in that second quarter where the Cavaliers really ran away with things, mainly due to points off of those giveaways. Randle was not great, and defensively, he also did not hold his own against Evan Mobley like he did last game. Like I mentioned, Evan Mobley and Jared Allen both had really solid performances, so his performance through the first couple of games has not been great, but I wouldn't say he's been terrible. He's just been kind of meh, and, that's fine for most players, but Julius Randle is looked at to be the all-NBA guy for the Knicks. I thought he had an amazing season. I would put him in an all-NBA team if I was one of the voters. I think he's been really good, and I was expecting more from him so far through this series. Now, once again, he is facing against Evan Mobley, who's one of the best front court defenders in the league, so that's, a reason why he could be struggling. But even still, you are an all-NBA guy, and you're going to be faced off against some great frontcourt defenders for your entire time in New York here if you ever want to make a deep playoff run. There's Mobley, there's Giannis, there's Embiid, just to name a few guys off the top of my head. You're going to face a lot of great defenders. You have to be able to handle that pressure, especially when you're playing alongside some pretty solid guys on this roster. Now, the Knicks as a whole struggled in this game. It wasn't all on Barrett or Randle, but these are two guys that I think need to be better. Randle in particular, his numbers so far through the series are 20.5 points and 9 rebounds, which are fine, but they're coming at 37.5% shooting. The turnovers, way more turnovers than there have been assists. They just need more out of Julius Randle. He's supposed to be their all-NBA player. I don't think he's been terrible so far, but once again, they managed to take a game with Barrett struggling and Randle also not playing great so far. If those two guys can figure it out, the Knicks are in a really good spot to win this series. I think they're very capable of turning it around, and ultimately, if RJ Barrett can just knock down some shots and Randle can start playing like his all-NBA self, the Knicks have a wide open opportunity to take this series, being tied 1-1 going back to Madison Square Garden. They could send this thing back to Cleveland up 3-1 if they really played up to their potential. I just don't know if they're going to, and that's the big problem. What are they going to get from their stars? I think Jalen Brunson almost assuredly will bounce back in a big way, but will Julius Randle return to his all-NBA form? Will RJ Barrett look like the player he's shown flashes of? And also for the rest of the guys, Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes has had some struggles as well. Will these other guys step up as well alongside those Knicks stars? Who's going to step up for the Knicks? That's the big question for me right now. How do they respond to this massive Game 2 loss? I think they've got the chance to go out and take this one, going up 2-1 in Game 3, but they're going to need some players to be better, particularly Julius Randle and RJ Barrett, and if they're not, they're in big trouble in this series. Next, let's go ahead and move on to Suns versus Clippers, which also saw the home team bounce back for a Game 2 win, with Phoenix looking a lot more like the team I thought we would see in Game 1. They're led by Devin Booker, who dropped 38 points with 9 dimes while shooting 14 of 22 from the field and playing high-level defense. He's been incredible on both sides of the ball over these first 2 games, but really what I want to highlight is the defense, because I think most people know how great of a scorer Devin Booker is, but I don't think most people have realized yet that Devin Booker is also a really capable defender. I mean, he had multiple steals and blocks last game. In this one, he didn't have as many stocks, but he did play just some amazing individual defense. The hustle plays are there too. He's been an improved defender for a while now, and I think people are really going to start to realize over the course of the Suns' playoff run just how good Devin Booker can be on that side of the ball when he's truly locked in. And then meanwhile, of course, like I said, he's torching the Clippers offensively, as well as Kevin Durant and Chris Paul. The three of them were just absolutely on fire in the mid-range area. If you know me, I love watching mid-range jumpers go down, and that's exactly what this Suns team did all game. The Clippers were playing some pretty intense drop coverage with Zubats falling back, kind of giving them that mid-range shot or the pull-up three around a screen, and the Suns were making the Clippers pay time and time again. They're going to have to adjust because you can't give this Suns team that has Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Chris Paul on it, three of the most prolific mid-range scorers of recent history, on the same roster. You can't just keep giving them these opportunities. I expect the Clippers to adjust. Tyronn Lue is a good coach. Also have to give credit to DeAndre Ayton, who is also knocking down some mid-range jumpers. Torrey Craig feels like he has not missed whatsoever over the course of these first 2 games. The Suns offense was just absolutely clicking in this one, and when they're playing like this offensively, they feel very, very hard to beat. It's just a question of how consistent can they be playing like this. Can the role players perform? What's Chris Paul going to do on a night-to-night basis? Shout out to him, by the way, breaking the Scott Foster curse, finally winning a game refereed by Scott Foster in the playoffs. Yeah, Phoenix was really impressive in this game. I thought this was a big bounce back win. As for the Clippers, they got great performances from Kawhi Leonard and Russell Westbrook, both of which had about 30 points, but outside of them, there really wasn't much help on their roster. Eric Gordon had 12 points, but he shot abysmally. Same with Zubats, who had 8 points, but was just 2 of 7 from the field. Norman Powell was 4 of 11 for 12 points. They got some production, it just wasn't efficient production. They need the depth to step up. That's their biggest advantage in this series, is having a lot more guys that are capable of having big performances on the roster than the Suns do. But overall, if you're not going to get that depth production, if the bench is going to fail you like that, the Clippers aren't going to last long in this series, especially without Paul George. Russ and Kawhi need to continue to be really, really solid. The rest of the players need to step up. It has to be a team effort on every night for the Clippers to win, and games like this just aren't going to cut it. Finally, there was Hawks versus Celtics, which I'm only going to touch on because, once again, it was a blowout. The Celtics are just so much better than this Hawks team. Jason Tatum was amazing. Same with Derek White, who I feel like has kind of flown under the radar this season. He's been phenomenal for them as a guard. He won a Player of the Week at some point this season. He's great defensively. He's having the best offensive season of his career as well. And between him, Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, who might win Sixth Man of the Year, in fact, I think he will, and Jaylen Brown, like, that's a ridiculously lethal 4-guard rotation. There's no team in the league that has 4 capable guards or wings like the Celtics do. Also, Jason Tatum, like I mentioned, was great. Robert Williams continues to show how impactful he can be when he is healthy. Al Horford was great. This whole team is just really good. The Celtics are incredibly deep. They're a really solid roster. They can defend well, score well. They're just so much better than the Hawks. It's really not even close. Boston's defense has been particularly effective against Trae Young, who in this game once again struggled. He shot just 40% from the field and had 5 turnovers. They just need Trae Young to be better. He's supposed to be their franchise guy, the star. And yes, I know the Celtics team is just so much better. They've got so many great defensive guards. I understand why Trae Young is struggling. But even so, if they want any chance of even taking a single game or making a single game close in this series, they need more out of Trae Young. DeJounte Murray was good in this game, but overall, it's just not going to be enough. John Collins was really, really rough in this one. He completely has fallen off a cliff this season. The Hawks are in big trouble. This offseason is going to be a wild one for them because they just committed 3 first-round picks to DeJounte Murray to once again get knocked out in the first round and look even worse than they did probably last season. All that being said, those are my thoughts on the most recent playoff games. Let me know in the comment section below what your takeaways were from these matchups as well. Let me know what your takeaway is from the Draymond Green suspension. I was going to talk about it more in this video, but I decided that it's something I can instead cover when I talk about the Kings versus Warriors game 3 in a couple of days. So that's when I'll kind of give my full opinions on the suspension as we see kind of what the implications of it are, whether the Warriors go down 0-3 or they're able to still steal a win without Draymond in game 3 back in Golden State. But for now, let me know what your takeaways were from these games in particular. I appreciate y'all watching. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy, as well as hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. I'll see y'all later. Real One, say it back.